Hi, I'm Daniel Gold, and welcome to the Gold Standard Leadership Lab. By day, I'm a partner at a leading advisory firm where I draw upon my background as an attorney to help my clients succeed. This podcast, though, is my personal project, completely separate and apart from my day job, but reflects the same passion that I exhibit everywhere for teaching, mentoring, and helping others succeed through simple, impactful lessons. It is my hope that you'll walk away with practical takeaways that help you on your leadership journey. Thanks for being a part of this community and for joining me in the Leadership Lab. Let's get started. Today, we're going to talk about something that no one really warns you about. Not in school, not in business school, not in law school, not in your first performance review. Nobody sits you down before you cross the finish line and says, "This might feel worse than you expect." Let me explain. Because I'm going to start with a conversation that I recently had with my son who just graduated college. They worked hard and did everything right. And when graduation came, certainly they celebrated, but the joy sort of wore off because the relief and pride that they expected, well, they actually felt a little bit lost. Why? They told me that they didn't know quite what to do with themselves because for their entire life, from the age of 5, there always was school, a next grade, a next semester, a next assignment, and then in an instant, it was over. No more school. And that's when the reality sets in. And I'm going to tell you what I shared with my son because it's relevant for all of us as leaders. What they were experiencing is called goal depression. And I want to be clear, I did not coin that phrase. The research on this is real and the psychology behind it is incredibly well documented. But more importantly, I have lived it. And if you're the kind of person who sets ambitious goals, who goes all in, who pours blood, sweat, and tears and time into something that truly matters, well, then you have either lived it too or you will. So let's talk about what it is, why it happens, and what to do about it. So goal depression is the psychological low that follows the achievement of a meaningful goal. It's not failure. It's not even ingratitude. It's not weakness. It is what happens when the thing that has been organizing all of your energy, all of your attention, and frankly, your identity suddenly no longer exists. And the research on why this happens is actually really fascinating. Here's the short version. Your brain releases dopamine in anticipation of a goal. That's important. In anticipation of a goal, not at the moment of completion. So the neurochemical reward system in your prefrontal cortex, it's actually wired for the chase, the pursuit, the striving. When you are working towards something meaningful, your brain is constantly fed by the process. Every small step forward, every milestone, every inch of progress, your brain registers it and rewards you for continuing. But then what happens? You hit the goal, and the chase is over, and the dopamine loop closes, and there is a gap. A real physiological gap between who you were during the pursuit and who you are now that it is all done. And this isn't a personal failure, by the way. This is biology at work. But here's where it gets interesting for leaders specifically. The more ambitious that you are, the harder this hits. Because the moment you invest in a goal, the more your sense of identity gets fused with the pursuit. The goal stops being something you're doing. It becomes something that you are. And when it ends, there is this identity question sitting right there in the distance. And it sounds like this. Well, who am I now? And that question, it's uncomfortable. And most driven people don't have a very good answer for it. So they either numb it by sprinting immediately towards the next goal, or they sit in it and feel the hollow without understanding what it is. And I will tell you this, Neither of those responses is optimal. And so now I'm going to tell you why in a few minutes, because I want to give you 4 examples first. 4 different people, 4 different goals, and 4 different contexts. And I want you to find yourself in at least one of them. So the first is obvious in what we talked about before. My son, the college graduate, the entire architecture of their life since kindergarten has been organized around school. Fall semester, spring semester, grades, applications, acceptance letters, the courses, graduation requirements. For all of these years, school was the structure that told them who they were and what they were supposed to be doing. And when it ended, there was no structure on the other side. There's just this question mark. And that question mark really does feel like failing. Now, the second is a sales rep I know. Now, this person literally had one goal: sell hard enough, perform at a high enough level, and help build the kind of company that would ultimately get acquired. Because when the acquisition happened, he was going to get a significant financial reward for what he built. That goal literally consumed him. It shaped every decision, every quarter, every relationship. And then the acquisition did happen, and he got the payout. He achieved exactly what he set out to do. And guess what? He was miserable. Not immediately, but within months. He was miserable because the goal that had organized his entire professional identity was all of a sudden gone. And there was nothing there to replace it. Now, the third is my daughter. She performs in theater productions, and if you've ever seen a theater production from the inside, you know it is not a casual commitment. It is months and months of rehearsals, late nights, memorization, costume fittings, set construction, emotional investment to the tilt. The entire production builds toward the final performance. And when the curtain comes down after that last show, after that final bow, she is always quiet in a way that is hard to watch. Not because anything went wrong, everything went great, but it's because something ended. She has goal depression every single time. And the fourth? Well, the fourth, now that's me. I'm going to tell you a little bit about me now, because when I joined the leading advisory firm that I work in my day job, I had a very clear goal upon entering: make partner. And not just make partner, I wanted to make partner in the shortest time possible at the firm. And that goal was literally my compass from day one. It organized how I worked. It organized how I showed up. It organized who I connected with, what I was willing to do, and what I was not going to do. And 3 years in, it happened. I made partner. The pinnacle of the career I had been building. And I remember standing at the top of that mountain and thinking, this is it. I did it. But then the next thought was, well, now what? I had goal depression in a serious way. I had climbed that mountain I had been staring at for 3 years. And I was standing at the summit. And I felt the wind. And I looked around. And I didn't know what came next. And the climb down the mountain is not nearly as compelling as the climb up. You already know how the mountain ends. And so here's what I wish someone had told me before I made partner, before I crossed the finish line of my first marathon, before any of the moments where I hit the goal and felt the floor drop out below me. And this is it. You owe yourself the view. Let me say that again. You owe yourself the view. What does that mean? Before you pick the next mountain, before you pivot to the next goal, before you let your drive take you immediately to that next pursuit, you owe yourself the view. You owe yourself the time to stand at the summit and look at the world around you and smile. Because you did this. Because you earned this. This happened because of what you built. and you need to honor it. And this is not a soft suggestion from me, because it is a discipline. And for driven, ambitious leaders, it is one of the hardest disciplines because it requires you to stop, to be present, to breathe, to be mindful, to let the moment exist without already instrumentalizing it toward what comes next. This is the mindful piece. This is the gratitude piece. This is what it actually means to live with intention and not just to move with urgency. I wrote something in a graduation card for my son. Part of what I wrote was this: act with intention, move with mindfulness, and accept your wins gratefully. This is not greeting card language. This is a practice. It is a daily decision to be present to what you have built before you start building the next thing. When I finished my marathon, I had to consciously fight the urge to skip past the finish line emotionally. I knew from experience what the hollow felt like. So I made a decision. I stayed in it. I let myself feel what it meant to have crossed that finish line. I let all of those miles matter. All of them, not just the 26.2. I'm talking about the thousands of training miles that I did, the 4:30 a.m. wake-up time, the aching legs, the long runs in the dark and cold. I let all of that land, and then, and only then, did I let myself think about what was going to come next. And I'm going to tell you this, the sequencing here matters. It's the summit first, then the next mountain. So what is the antidote to goal depression? There are 3 parts, and I need you to work on each one of these, because part 1 is what I call the summit practice. Honor what you built. Sit with it. This is not passivity. It is an active choice to be present to your own achievements before moving on. And for some of you, this may take a day, and for some of you, it might take a week. The point is not the duration. The point is intention. You decide to be there fully before you leave. Now, part 2 is this. Before you reach the summit, pick the next mountain. Because the antidote to goal depression is not to lower your ambition. It is to never let your ambition run out of road. When I was finishing the marathon, I didn't know exactly what my next race would be. The race hadn't happened yet. I didn't know how my body would hold up, how I'd feel at mile 20, what the conditions would be, so I couldn't commit to a specific race, but I committed to something I could commit to, and that is, I would run another long race. I would not let this be a one-time event, and that was enough. I gave myself grace. That was my horizon. And having a horizon meant that when I crossed that finish line, I wasn't stepping off a cliff. I was stepping onto the next trail. Before the goal expires, name the next one. It does not have to be fully formed. It does not have a date or a finish line or a specific target. But look, it has to exist, even as a direction, because a direction is enough to keep that very, very important dopamine loop open. Now, finally is part 3, and this is the one that most leaders miss. It is to fall in love with the learning itself. The most durable antidote to goal depression is not having better goals. It's becoming constitutionally curious. When you are genuinely, consistently hungry to learn, to grow, to understand more than you understood yesterday, you are never standing at a final summit. Because every answer opens a new question, and every skill gained reveals a new skill to develop, and every door opened shows you the hallway beyond it. This isn't a productivity hack I'm teaching you. This is your identity. The leaders who age well, who stay relevant, who continue to grow long after they have achieved what most people set as their peak, they are not the ones with the best goal-setting systems. They're the ones who are still curious, who are still learning, still genuinely interested in the world and the people in it. And here's what I know from watching this play out across decades in law, in technology, and in leadership. Curiosity compounds. Why? Because the more you learn, the better you get at your craft. The better you get at your craft, the more doors open. And the more doors open, the more you connect with people doing remarkable things. And the more you connect, the more opportunity finds you. It is a workflow, and it is self-sustaining in a way that gold chasing alone never is. And so here's what I want you to really take from today's episode. If you are sitting in the hollow right now, if you hit the gold and felt the floor drop out below you, that is not a sign that you did something wrong. It is a sign that you cared deeply, very deeply, about something you gave it everything you had that deserves a ton of respect, not pathology. Honor what you built. Take the view in. Let the summit be a summit before it becomes a base camp. And then, and only then, when you are ready, look over that ridge. Find the next mountain. Not because you have to, because you are the kind of person who climbs. Design your future with intent. Shape your next move with mindfulness. Accept your wins gratefully, because when you do those things and do them consistently, you will not just avoid the hollow. You will build a life where the climbing and the summit and the next mountain, they are all part of the same intentional arc. Because why? Because that is leadership, and that is the work. And remember, leadership isn't about perfection, it is about progress. So take this lesson, put it into action, and continue setting the gold standard in your own life and at work. I'll see you all next time.